The view from the observation deck of the Basin Rim Institute was often described as staggering, a panorama of boundless, stark beauty. But for Dr. Elena Volkov, stationed hundreds of kilometers out on the salt flats, it was simply existence distilled to its rawest form. Below, stretching to the horizon in every direction, lay an immense, flat expanse of shimmering white and pale orange. The Great Salt Basin. It was the scar of a sea that had never returned, a sizable, dry, chemical wilderness that had shaped not only geology, but destiny. Distant, scattered like cruel, beautiful mirages, were the shallow, hypersaline lakes, their waters intensely colored by distinctive microbial life, electric blues, fiery reds, deep purples painting abstract, transient strokes on the white canvas. The air outside was thin and intensely hot, a furnace blast even the Institute's advanced climate controls struggled to filter entirely. Sometimes she imagined she could taste the dry mineral tang of it on her tongue, even inside the hermetic seal. This desolate, beautiful, and deeply resource-rich landscape wasn't just a view. It was a constant physical reminder of the geological divergence that had fundamentally reshaped human development. It was May 2025, and humanity lived on a planet where the cradle of civilization, as known in some hypothetical distant reality, simply found no place, replaced by the formidable barrier and singular environment of the Great Salt Basin. Elena took a sip of her recycled water, a small act of defiance, its coolness a welcome luxury against the imagined heat outside. She wasn't at the main institute campus, perched high on the cliffs bordering the basin, in what might once have been the Italian peninsula. Her post was Research Station Delta 7, a solitary, high-tech structure built on reinforced stilts deep within the former Adriatic Sea sector, 1,000 kilometers from the nearest permanent settlement. It was less an observation deck and more a window onto her solitary world, her laboratory providing the only safe viewport onto the endless, shimmering plain. On a small shelf near her main screen, a single, hardy-looking synthetic succulent offered a splash of green, a small, silent rebellion against the surrounding aridity. The pivotal divergence had occurred not within the fleeting span of recorded human chronicles, but in the deep past, millions of years ago. The complex geological dance of continental plates, the same powerful forces responsible for periodically closing and opening the Strait of Gibraltar in another hypothetical past, here resulted in a permanent, or at least enduringly long-term closure leading up to the age of humanity. Geological uplift, massive volcanic activity, perhaps a combination on a scale unforeseen. The exact mechanics remained subjects of intense scientific debate, but the outcome was clear. A barrier sufficient to prevent the Atlantic waters from ever significantly refilling the extensive Mediterranean depression after one of its periodic desiccation cycles. Over immense spans of time, cut off from its primary water source, the Great Depression had simply evaporated, layer upon layer, leaving behind kilometers-deep strata of salt, gypsum, anhydrite, and a complex cocktail of other evaporite minerals. Wind whistled over its surface. The relentless sun had baked it dry, creating a landscape of extreme heat, utter aridity, and stunning, brutal beauty. The ceaseless whisper of the wind against the station's hull was the constant soundtrack to her life here. The consequences for human prehistory and the subsequent flourishing of civilization were, by any measure, far-reaching. Early human migrations between the continents of Africa, Europe, and Asia were not facilitated by shallow seas or convenient land bridges emerging periodically from a relatively wet basin. Instead, populations were compelled to channel themselves around this immense, hot, dry obstacle. Across the evolving North African landmass, where the Sahara's extent and aridity may have been amplified by shifted climate patterns, around the eastern edge through the Levant, or via more northerly land routes into Europe, there was no easy, central maritime thoroughfare to encourage interconnected coastal advancement. The regions that, in another reality, bordered the Mediterranean, Greece, Italy, the Levant, Egypt, North Africa, followed vastly different trajectories and faced profoundly altered environments. Rivers that would have flowed into a large moderating sea now fed inland lakes that eventually dwindled, becoming smaller hypersaline pools, or carved different, often less consistent or less nurturing courses. Climates in surrounding regions changed significantly, frequently becoming hotter and drier, losing the sea's substantial moderating thermal mass and its contribution of moisture to regional weather patterns. Civilizations emerged in other locations, their developmental paths shaped intrinsically by adaptation to aridity. Reliance on fundamentally altered river systems, the mighty Nile, for instance, no longer ending in a fertile delta on a seacoast, but terminating in a vast, complex series of increasingly saline lakes and salt flats in what was once its mouth, and interaction with fundamentally distinct neighbors formed by the changed geography. The very concept of a Mediterranean world as a shared cultural, economic, and political space, a dynamic crucible of interconnected civilizations like classical Greece, the Roman Empire, and Carthage, simply found no historical parallel. Instead, the human narrative unfolded along the rim, the rugged, diverse edges of the Great Salt Basin, and across the broad landmasses forced into new and different patterns of connection and interaction. Over millennia, human societies evolved around the edges of this sizable, empty central space. Powerful states emerged in regions where resources were available, and bottlenecks in the new trade routes created centers of wealth and influence. Along the reshaped courses of major river systems, around the fewer, more precious surviving freshwater lakes, or in areas with early access to vital minerals from the basin itself, or other favorable geological formations. Trade routes crisscrossed the landmasses, complex networks painstakingly established and maintained, forced to navigate around the enormous central obstacle of the basin. This led to radically different patterns of economic, cultural, and technological exchange between Europe, Africa, and Asia, compared to a Mediterranean-centric past. The spread of religions, languages, and ideas followed these revised pathways of contact and commerce. Technology developed with a strong, early, and sustained focus on water management, sophisticated irrigation techniques in limited fertile zones, deep well drilling in arid areas, and eventually, highly advanced desalination technologies and extensive long-distance pipeline infrastructure to transport precious fresh water. Adaptation to arid and extreme conditions was not merely useful, it was paramount for survival and growth. Resource extraction, particularly of the rich evaporite minerals from the basin, became a crucial industry early on, shaping economies and driving technological innovation in materials science and engineering. Naval technology, while certainly developing on the outer oceans, the Atlantic, Indian, Pacific, etc., lacked the intense, constant crucible of conflict, trade competition, and cultural exchange provided by a central enclosed sea like the Mediterranean in that other timeline. This likely led to divergent trajectories in maritime power projection and interaction. By 2025, the regions bordering the former Mediterranean basin were a diverse collection of nations, ranging from vast confederacies to smaller, intensely specialized states. Their cultures, economies, and historical paths were profoundly shaped by their direct or indirect relationship with the expansive, dry expanse at their heart. Some cities that were major ports in our timeline survived. Their strategic locations along realigned river courses or at key nodes of the new overland trade routes, allowing them to reinvent themselves as inland centers, reliant on large-scale pipelines for fresh water and power. The constant low thrum of distant pumps was a familiar sound even far out on the flats, a reminder of the immense effort required to sustain life on the rim. Others, less fortunate or less adaptable to the radical environmental changes and shifts in trade, were ruins slowly being covered by mineral salts and sand, silent ghosts of a history that never quite materialized. The basin itself remained a place of harsh conditions, largely uninhabitable by humans for permanent settlement, except for isolated, highly specialized research stations like Delta 7 and heavily automated resource extraction operations. Yet it was precisely these extreme circumstances, the millions of years of evaporation, that made it a source of immense mineral wealth: common salt, sodium chloride, in unimaginable quantities, gypsum, potash, magnesium salts, bromide, and crucially, potentially rare elements concentrated over eons by geological and evaporative processes. Technology in this world was a direct reflection of the priorities dictated by the environment and historical necessity. Highly advanced desalination providing precious fresh water to coastal populations and pumped hundreds, sometimes thousands of kilometers inland to support major cities and agriculture. Sophisticated, robust infrastructure for transporting water, mined minerals, and energy across vast distances and challenging terrain. Vehicles and equipment specifically designed to operate efficiently and reliably in the crushing heat, abrasive mineral dust, and corrosive chemical environment of the basin floor, and advanced extraction technologies for accessing and processing the distinctive and deeply buried mineral deposits locked within the kilometers of accumulated mineral layers. Scientific inquiry into geology, the unique extremophile life forms thriving in the hypersaline lakes, and climate adaptation was highly developed and generously funded, seen as critical for both survival and prosperity. Societies bordering the basin often possessed cultures emphasizing resilience, resourcefulness, cooperation in managing shared, scarce resources, especially water, and a deep, almost reverent, respect for the life-giving liquid that defined their struggle and their success. Our story focuses on Dr. Elena Volkov, a lead geochemist working for the International Salt Basin Authority, ISBA. ISBA was formed decades ago as a multinational body tasked with overseeing scientific research, managing resource extraction rights to prevent conflict, and mitigating potential environmental impacts within the vast depression, a necessary and often precarious framework given the competing interests of the surrounding nations and the shared nature of the central resource. Elena's station, Delta 7, represented the furthest edge of ISBA's deep research footprint in the Adriatic sector, a high-tech, self-sufficient oasis built on reinforced stilts that kept it just above the creeping, corrosive salt crust of the basin floor. Life here was defined by routine, scientific focus, and isolation. Elena's lab was her domain, a pristine, climate-controlled bubble of cutting-edge instrumentation and analytical equipment in the heart of the desolation. It was equipped with advanced spectroscopic analyzers, automated chemical robotics, mineralogical scanners, and a comprehensive suite of environmental monitoring systems linked to a distributed network of sensors and automated drones spread across her assigned sector. The view from her main lab window was one of stark, overwhelming, unchanging beauty, the endless salt plains under a brilliant, unfiltered sun, the sky an impossible, piercing blue, broken only by the distant shimmer of a hypersaline lake or the slow-moving, ant-like shapes of automated extraction vehicles harvesting surface mineral salts, kilometers away. It was utterly isolating, yes, a deliberate choice for deep focus. But it also offered a clarity and a sense of direct connection to the profound, indifferent processes of the planet impossible in more crowded, wet places. She often felt a deep sense of connection to the deep time represented by the layered strata beneath her, the slow, relentless geological and evaporative processes that had shaped this place over millions of years. Her personal motivation ran deeper than just a professional interest or a job. She remembered, vividly, the summer when the city's main desalination plant had a catastrophic failure, the rationing, the fear, the taste of brackish emergency water that still sometimes haunted her dreams. That childhood brush with utter scarcity had etched itself into her soul, making the study of water and the resources of the arid world her absolute calling. Her fascination with the basin wasn't just academic curiosity about its singular geology and biology. It was a connection to the fundamental reality of her world, the source of its greatest challenges and its most potential wealth. The extremophiles in the hypersaline lakes, in particular, held a strange pull for her. Life persisting and even flourishing against impossible odds, a powerful metaphor that didn't escape her in her isolated existence. One cycle, just after the automated surface composition analysis drones completed their routine sweep of Sector Adriatic 5, an unexpected alert flashed across Elena's monitoring console. The drone's instruments detected an unusually high, highly localized concentration of a specific rare earth element. One vital for advanced electronics, high-capacity batteries, and certain next-generation energy storage systems that powered their world. The concentration was not just elevated, it was orders of magnitude higher than anything predicted by standard geological models of evaporite deposition in the basin, or even by models considering known hydrothermal vents or volcanic activity along ancient fault lines beneath the salt. Elena leaned closer to the holographic display showing the data spike. Her initial professional skepticism, sensors malfunction, atmospheric contamination, giving way rapidly to a prickle of intense scientific curiosity and excitement. Her hands, usually steady, felt a faint tremor. An anomaly, she murmured, more to herself than to the station's AI assistant, which responded with a soft, synthesized confirmation tone. Run confirmation scan. Cross-reference with baseline data for Sector 5 over the last 50 cycles. Check for sensor calibration errors. Execute secondary atmospheric analysis. The AI swiftly complied. The confirmation scan came back positive. The anomaly was real, persistent, and highly localized. A distinct hotspot covering perhaps 50 square kilometers, with the highest concentrations centered in a few specific points within that area. Atmospheric analysis and sensor checks confirmed no local contamination or equipment fault. Not a sensor error, not atmospheric, Elena said, pushing away from the console, a sense of scientific wonder and urgency building in her chest. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the station's calm hum. This wasn't just interesting, this was utterly significant. AI, initiate targeted deep core sample analysis in Sector Adriatic 5, centered on coordinates. Insert coordinates. Request samples from strata depths, 100 meters, 500 meters, 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, and extend to 3,000 meters if possible. Cross-reference mineral composition results with known terrestrial deposition models, focusing on non-evaporite processes like hydrothermal or volcanic activity. Flag any inconsistencies. Also, crucially, cross-reference against potential extraterrestrial deposition models. Flag any anomalies against those as well. The request was complex, requiring the AI to coordinate Delta 7's most sophisticated deep drilling robots, specialized units designed for extreme pressure, high temperature, and corrosive salt environments. These weren't the surface drones, they were massive, self-contained units that slowly, painstakingly bored down through the kilometers of accumulated salt and underlying rock. The process would take days, maybe even weeks for the deepest samples. Elena, meanwhile, began a feverish deep dive into geological maps of the sector, satellite imagery analysis, gravity data surveys, seismic readings, anything that might offer a clue why this specific, seemingly unremarkable spot held such an astonishing concentration of this element. Evaporite basins are known to concentrate minerals through slow precipitation from evaporating water, but this kind of localized spike, especially for this type of REE, felt fundamentally wrong for that process alone. It hinted at something far more energetic, far more focused. The waiting period, while the robots drilled kilometers below, was the hardest part. Each day stretched into an eternity, the vast, unchanging white expanse outside the window seeming to mock the frantic activity of her mind. She ran countless simulations, reviewed every piece of literature she could access on mineral concentration mechanisms in extreme geological environments, impact mechanics, even theoretical models of element distribution in various celestial bodies. She tried to dismiss the faint, persistent thought of the extraterrestrial deposition flag she had included in her request. It felt like a long shot, bordering on science fiction, but the anomaly was so profound, so utterly unlike anything expected, that ruling out even the most remote possibilities was standard, if dramatic, scientific protocol. Days blurred into a week. Finally, the drilling robots signaled sample retrieval complete. The precious core samples, carefully encased and temperature-controlled, were automatically transferred via the station's internal transport system to her laboratory for initial processing and analysis. Working meticulously, her hands steadied despite her anticipation, Elena prepared the core sections, visually inspecting the layers, noting subtle changes in color and texture, before feeding fragments into her battery of spectroscopic analyzers and mineralogical scanners. The results began to stream in, complex chemical signatures painting a detailed picture of the deep salt layers and what lay beneath. Then came the analysis from the core samples taken from the deeper strata, particularly the 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 meter depths. The REE concentration was not only confirmed, but found to be even higher at greater depth, embedded within a distinct geological layer beneath the thickest evaporate deposits. But it wasn't just the amount that was significant. It was the suite of elements present alongside the targeted REE and their specific isotopic ratios, particularly trace elements like iridium and osmium, common in meteorites but rare in Earth's crust. These didn't match typical terrestrial volcanic or hydrothermal deposits. The composition felt definitively alien to Earth's standard geological processes. The station's AI, running the complex cross-reference protocols against its vast databases, flagged the results with a high statistical correlation against the potential extraterrestrial deposition models. Specifically, the mineralogical signature, the presence of shock-altered minerals, and the isotopic fingerprints were overwhelmingly consistent with a massive, localized impact event, a meteor or asteroid strike, occurring millions of years ago prior to the final, complete desiccation of the basin, perhaps when it still held a significant body of water or was a sweeping, muddy playa. The impactor, likely an asteroid rich in these rare elements, would have vaporized or melted on impact, scattering its material across the then-existing basin floor. Subsequent layers of salt and sediment accumulated over millions of years as the basin continued its relentless evaporation, had buried and perfectly preserved the impact site and its ejected, mineral-rich material deep beneath the accumulated layers, hidden from eons of wind and weather. Elena stared at the data, her breath catching in her throat, a deep sense of awe washing over her. A massive, untapped deposit of a vital resource created not by terrestrial geology alone, but by a cosmic event billions of years ago, traveling across unimaginable distances and then hidden for millions of years beneath the accumulated salt layers of a sea that never returned. It was a convergence of deep time, astrobiology, planetary science, and mineralogy on a scale that humbled her completely. This wasn't just an academic discovery of a geological curiosity. It had immense immediate economic, geopolitical, and technological implications for the nations bordering the basin and indeed for the entire world. This single spot held the potential to power a generation of advanced technology, redefine global supply chains, and shift the balance of power. Her initial surge of scientific awe was quickly joined by a weighty sense of responsibility and urgency. She knew the protocol for discoveries of this magnitude. Her findings were too significant, too potentially disruptive to the existing global resource landscape to keep to herself. They had to be reported immediately to ISBA headquarters. Director Anya Sharma, her direct superior, and a woman known for her remarkable skill in navigating the complex political waters ISBA operated in, would need to be informed personally. Elena had seen firsthand, during the potash crisis a decade ago, how Sharma could turn potential international conflict into uneasy cooperation through sheer will and diplomatic precision. From there, ISBA would initiate a complex, delicate, and potentially contentious process, verifying the findings with external experts, establishing a secure perimeter around the area, a significant logistical challenge in the vast, open basin, and, most significantly, initiating negotiations with the surrounding regional authorities regarding extraction rights, resource management frameworks, environmental protections, and profit sharing, managing the basin, a landscape forged by ancient geological and cosmic forces, required a constant, often precarious blend of cutting-edge scientific discovery, technological ingenuity, and complex, sometimes fraught, international cooperation. Elena meticulously compiled her data, detailed analysis, and clear conclusions into a secure, high-priority report package. As she finalized the transmission protocol to ISBA HQ, she felt the sheer weight of what she was unleashing upon her world. This wasn't just submitting a scientific paper. It was activating a powerful, potentially disruptive catalyst. Hours later, after the data had been received and underwent initial automated screening at HQ, she received a secure confirmation of receipt from ISBA HQ. This was followed minutes later by an incoming priority communication request, video, direct from Director Sharma. Director Sharma's face, usually a mask of calm authority and measured diplomacy, seemed etched with a controlled intensity that Elena had rarely seen. Dr. Volkov, we received your report. The preliminary assessment of the data, it's extraordinary, truly unprecedented. Are you absolutely certain of your conclusions regarding the origin? Director, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the lingering tremor of adrenaline in her system. The spectroscopic analysis, the isotopic ratios, the presence of shock-altered minerals, the distribution pattern, the localization, it is inconsistent with any known terrestrial evaporite deposit or typical mineral concentration process. All the evidence points, with high statistical confidence, to a bolide impact. Sharma was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant as she processed the sheer implications, her mind undoubtedly already running through scenarios. An asteroid buried under the basin in the Adriatic sector. She ran a hand over her short gray hair, a rare gesture of stress. Do you understand the scale of this, Elena? Not just scientifically, though that is vast, but politically, economically, the value is staggering. Yes, Director, I do, Elena confirmed, the reality of it settling heavier with each passing moment. This will change everything, Sharma said, her gaze snapping back to Elena, sharp and direct. Securing that site will be a logistical nightmare out there. And the negotiations? Every nation on the rim, and many beyond who rely on these resources, will want a peace. There will be unprecedented pressure on ISBA from every direction. She paused, her expression softening slightly, a flicker of something akin to concern. Your discovery is monumental, Doctor. Truly world-altering, but it comes with considerable complications. Be prepared for that. I understand, Elena repeated. Though she knew intellectually understanding it was vastly different from living through the storm that was about to break. Stay at Delta 7, Sharma instructed. Maintain absolute radio silence regarding the details of the discovery, beyond the secure channels we are establishing with you. We are dispatching a rapid assessment team to your location immediately, specialists in security, geology for independent verification, and a preliminary diplomatic liaison. They will arrive in approximately 48 hours, weather permitting. Be prepared to brief them fully upon arrival. And, Elena, be careful out there. The secure communication line went dead. Elena sat back in her lab chair, the usual soft hum of the station's systems suddenly seeming loud in the pressing silence. The dry mineral tang in the air, usually unnoticed, seemed sharper now. The deep isolation that had once felt like a peaceful haven for pure research now felt exposed, vulnerable. Her lab, usually a sanctuary of scientific pursuit, suddenly felt like the potential epicenter of a global conflict. Looking out at the endless, shimmering expanse of the Great Salt Basin, the pale orange and white stretching beneath the brilliant, harsh sun, Elena felt the profound, almost terrifying connection between the deep time of planetary history and the tumultuous present of human affairs. Her work, uncovering the hidden wealth and ancient cosmic secrets locked within this singular environment, was a direct, unavoidable result of the bizarre, specific geological path their world had taken. The absence of the Mediterranean Sea had indeed prevented one historical trajectory from occurring, complete with its own set of conflicts and cooperations, but it had created another, a world where civilization had adapted to radically different conditions, where ingenuity in resource management was paramount, and where the legacy of ancient, even cosmic, geological events continued to deeply shape the challenges and opportunities of human life in 2025. The expansive salt field, once an empty, desolate bowl of forgotten prehistory, was now revealing itself as a vital, if unforgiving, heartland. Its newly revealed resources poised to power a world that had learned to thrive precariously on its edge, but which now faced the deep ancient question of whether humanity could manage immense wealth and power without tearing itself apart. The storm was coming, born of salt and starlight.